Hello, everybody. How are you? It's great to be with you all. I can't think of a group I'd rather be with. You know, there's an old expression, a little steel town that I moved to from Scranton called Claymont, Delaware, and it was that you go home with them that brung you to the dance. This is the group that brung me to the dance: environmentalists, the Sierra Club, and as well as the United Steelworkers. You know, in '72, when I announced as a 29-year-old kid to run for the United States Senate, no one gave me, with good reason, any remote chance of winning. Richard Nixon won my state with, I think it was 68% of the vote. George McGovern, a good friend, was at the top of the ticket, but not very popular in my state of Delaware. And I was running against the most popular man to date in the state. Along about, I guess it was the very, very end of August, there was a big old fella, and I mean big, he was about 6'5", 260 pounds, named Emory Woodard. And I remember Emory Woodard, who represented the steelworkers in Claymont, took me up to see a guy named Huey Carcel in Pennsylvania, who was the regional director. And he said, "Huey, we're endorsing Biden, or you got a problem with me." They endorsed Biden, and everything else began to move. But even before that, the Sierra Club stepped up to help me. And I can't tell you how much I've appreciated and how much I have enjoyed working with both organizations, including World Wildlife Fund and the League of Conservation Voters. And, everyone thought that the only help I got on the environmental efforts, because I was a councilman and I was able to get rezoned an awful lot of stuff along the Delaware shoreline, which became the Coastal Zone Act, the first of its kind in the nation, with a Republican governor who later became the president of Sierra Club. And it was because of labor. Back then, one of the big issues we had was the Delaware Bay, and it was extremely polluted. And the single biggest support I had in cleaning up the Delaware Bay were all the environmental groups, but the UAW and organized labor stepped up. Because, you know, the irony is that the very people who were most affected by a degrading environment are the very people organized labor represents. They don't put difficult plants with access in the path of serious pollution in the midst of very wealthy neighborhoods. They're in the neighborhoods that I grew up in. They're in the neighborhoods that American labor represents. And I realize it's not just American labor here, and not just the environmental groups, but also General Motors and many other corporate leaders that are here as well. Environmental groups and organized labor have long understood that you can have a clean environment and a strong economy. It's not, nor should it be, either or. It was no different then, but today it's different because it's accepted much more broadly than it was back then. And I might note parenthetically, Leo talked about the middle class. Labor built the middle class. Labor built the middle class. And if I could wave one wand to begin the process of rebuilding the middle class, it would be restored labor to the position it occupied 40 years ago. It would be the single most important thing we could do. But things have changed, and the international economic environment has changed, as well as our domestic environment has changed. And we're in the midst of a rapid energy transformation in the United States and all around the world. And it's unlike anything we've seen in the last 200 years. North America is now and will remain the epicenter of energy in the 21st century. Not Saudi Arabia, not Nigeria, not Venezuela, North America. And in the process of that, we're attracting 21st century businesses and industry to our shores. If you look at all the statistics, you're no longer going to hear much about outsourcing. You're going to continue to hear about insourcing because we are uniquely positioned of any region of the world, any nation of the world, to grow in the 21st century. Energy costs in the United States are about half what they are in Europe and a third of what they are in Japan and Korea. Secondly, we have increased production of renewable energy, solar and wind, here at home. Since the President and I were sworn in with the help of all of you in the audience in the last 6 years, the United States has increased solar electric generation 20-fold. And it doubled it in 2014 in just one single year. Meeting with the Energy Department, Ernie Moniz and others, there is no reason why we can't significantly increase the production. The cost is coming down rapidly in wind and energy. It's a little bit like, everybody asks me why I keep saying that. I happened to see in the newspaper not long ago that there was a cost of a 60-inch television, flat screen TV, 6 years ago was $20,000. Today you can buy one for $500. Since 2009, we've tripled the amount of electric production by wind, in large part because it's becoming more competitive as technological breakthroughs are coming in exponential ways. Together, wind and solar supply enough energy right now to power 16 million homes in America. And there's no reason why we can't increase that by multiples in the near term, not the long term. The cost of renewables is coming down. For example, in 2013 alone, the price of commercial and residential solar declined by 12%. And to build on this progress toward a clean economy, our budget includes permanent refundable tax credit to give investors the stability they need to scaling up clean, homegrown, renewable energy sources. That's the purpose of tax expenditures. Why do we continue to spend $4.6 billion a year to encourage oil companies? They're not bad guys. Why do we, no, by the way, it made sense. It made sense 20 years ago when the cost and the risk was so high. It makes no more sense. We should be investing in the things that will generate energy independence and energy and cleaner energy. And so that's why we think we should make these tax cuts permanent. Third, we're seeing incredible improvements in energy efficiency in everything from commercial buildings to homes to appliances to automobiles. Just look at the product General Motors is making now. They're saving over the period of the next 10 years, taxpayers trillions of dollars in gasoline prices over time. I think it's 1.2 trillion. Don't hold me to that number. It's not on my screen here. But it's close. It's close. It's close. The point is that look at the Recovery Act, which, by the way, actually worked, notwithstanding what our Republican friends said. I was a little surprised when the president announced the Republic Act and he turned around and he said, and Joe will do it, Sheriff Joe. I said, oh, thank you very much, Mr. President. Over $800 billion, but we initiated the act. Now, a poll by the University of Chicago School of Economics indicates that over 80% of the economists think it was important and necessary. It increased employment and saved us from a depression. And guess what? It wasted less than 0.4% of all the act, the best run program that we've ever had, because it put people to work and it invested a great deal of money in clean energy. You know that. In fact, the Recovery Act invested about $80 billion in projects related to energy and the environment. It's like giving folks a tax credit for installing more energy efficiency windows, heating and cooling systems. In addition, we developed new energy standards for household appliances that will cut by 1.8 billion tons of carbon pollution and save consumers and business over $400 billion in the next 2 decades. And it will help organize labor. Our vehicles are more efficient than ever as well. As I said, just take a look at General Motors that's here and others. Look at their products. In 2025, we expect to double the fuel efficiency by 54.5 miles per gallon. Remember when we were told back when the Clean Air Act was first written that the automobile industry will never compete if we insist on these mileage standards? And we were told just 6 years ago that this couldn't be done. We couldn't demand this. The truth of the matter is, we're the most innovative entrepreneurial country in the world. We set a goal, and in the process, we saved $1.7 trillion at the pump and cut oil consumption by 12 billion barrels, which equals nearly 4 years of gas Americans put in their cars. The fourth thing we did is we made, with your help and encouragement, long overdue updates in our clean air standards by putting in place the first ever national limits on mercury and other toxic air pollutions from power plants, curbing smog forming pollution from oil and gas wells, and tightening air quality standards on soot from power plants and vehicles. As a consequence, every year we'll avert thousands of premature deaths. We'll prevent tens of thousands of heart attacks and hospital visits. We'll alleviate hundreds of thousands of asthma attacks in our children. Fifth, the President's Climate Action Plan plays a critical piece in this energy transformation. Not only does it help build up our community's resilience to more frequent extreme weather caused by climate change, not only does it accelerate our use of renewable energy sources and make our buildings and homes more energy efficient, but it also proposed the first limits on carbon pollution from existing and future power plants, the single largest source of harmful carbon pollution in the United States. Folks, it's time that we set limits on carbon pollution, just like we set limits on deadly pollutants like arsenic and lead. What's the difference? Folks, the point is the energy transformation occurring is changing the way electricity is generated, used by business, by homeowners, and by the world. It's good news. It's good news, and it's leading to cleaner air and creating jobs here at home. Last year alone, as a country, we installed more solar panels in 3 weeks than we did in all of 2008. The U.S. solar industry is adding jobs 10 times faster than the rest of the economy, supporting tens of thousands of jobs across the country. Wind energy in the United States supports 50,000 jobs now, and it will support roughly 600,000 jobs in the next 2.5 decades. And here's the key point. They're not just jobs on solar fields or wind farms or construction sites. They're jobs in factories, making the glass, making the steel, making the turbines. They're jobs in the factory where panels, blades, gearboxes, all are being made. Good, decent paying jobs. They're good paying jobs for engineers, construction workers, truck drivers, utility operators, electricians, up and down the supply chain. And it's a similar virtuous cycle we see with our increased investment in energy efficiency, where it's not just jobs for people installing new energy efficient windows and appliances in buildings in our homes. It's jobs for folks manufacturing these products, manufacturing right here in the United States. It's engineers, jobs for engineers designing new smart technology so consumers can make better choices about the energy they consume. But to capture this transformation, we need to modernize our entire infrastructure, and especially our energy infrastructure, like our gas lines and our electric grids. There are over 200,000 miles of high voltage transmission lines running in America, 2.2 million miles of local distribution circuits in our nation's electric grid, and over 300,000 miles of transmission pipelines and hundreds of processing plants and underground storage facilities in America's natural gas infrastructure network. And many of these lines, circuit pipelines, facilities were built decades ago, making our energy infrastructure increasingly vulnerable. In fact, between 2003 and 2012, an estimated 679 widespread power outages were due to severe weather, costing the U.S. economy $18 billion to $33 billion each of those years. It's simple, folks. The President and I have long been calling for increased infrastructure investment. It's important. And by the way, if we do what we need to do, it will create millions of good-paying jobs. Millions and thousands of jobs for steel workers making the steel. Thousands of jobs for people working in the cement industry, etc. Look, if we only are prepared to step up and deal with this energy transformation. And if we do it, it will create a virtuous cycle of good-paying jobs, attracting companies to our shores and keeping companies on our shores from leaving. And we'll all benefit from a cleaner environment. And many people will benefit from new jobs and economic growth resulting from this transformation. And again, good, decent-paying jobs, not minimum wage jobs. Jobs you can raise a family on. We also know that the benefits aren't felt evenly across the country, though. Folks, we always do best when we act as one America. We always do best when we look out for one another within this federal system. The whole purpose of the federal system is when one part of the country is in trouble, another part steps in. For the last 150 years, the people in coal mining regions of America have made considerable sacrifices and commitments, sacrifices in their health and their well-being, to spur the Industrial Revolution to sustain our economic growth. And they did it. They did it before we became aware of the consequences of pollution generated by this form of energy. And now we're transitioning away to new, cleaner energy, a new, cleaner energy economy. We can't leave them behind, just as they never left us behind. At your core, the uniting feature, I think, of all of you in this hall is that you care about people. You care about fairness. You care about people being treated decently. I was raised early on in Scranton, Pennsylvania, although the coal industry had pretty well begun to die after World War II. With my grandfather, my uncles, and all my neighbors, I heard the stories about when coal was king and what happened, what the neighborhood used to look like before, how the economy used to thrive, how we had all these jobs. It's one of the reasons my dad moved from Scranton when I was in 4th grade. There weren't many good jobs. He never worked in the coal mine. The closest we came to that was my great-grandfather was a mining engineer. But the point is, the city, the community, the area, once proud and economically powerful, saw things change. Coming from a coal region, I know coal is more than a way of making a living, it's a way of life. It's not just your job. Come with me into West Virginia and Appalachia. It's not just your job, it's your community. It's the way you recreate. It's the way you marry. It's the way you bury the dead. It's a culture. It's a culture. And they're scared with good reason. It's how you raise your family. And seeing a mine shut down was like watching a community shrivel. The way I see it is that when a natural disaster hits a community, we don't hesitate to step in. When there's a drought in the Midwest, we all chip in as a nation. When there are forest fires in the West, we chip in. When there's hurricanes in the East, the whole nation chips in. The entire community comes together to support that portion of America that's undergoing changes beyond their control. I think it should be the same with coal communities undergoing this energy transition. And by the way, you sit down with these folks and you say, we'll get you a good job. They say, well, you're going to get me a job I can make $65,000, $75,000 a year? Tell me where you're going to get me that kind of job here in Appalachia or in southeastern Pennsylvania, or in southern Ohio, etc. The way I see it, we have a collective moral obligation to help these workers in these local communities. Now, folks, this is going to be really tough work, but I also know the people in those communities. They're as tough as nails. They work hard. They're entrepreneurial. They'll do whatever it takes to maintain and support their families. They just need an even shot. And while this transition from old to new energy has been decades in the making, we're the ones, all of us in this room and this administration, stepping up to help these communities transition to this new energy economy. The administration has what we call the Power Plus plan, which would take such actions as restoring the solvency of pensions for miners who worked hard all their lives. And they deserve what they earn. We've done it before in the railroad industry. It's time to make sure we do it for coal miners. We also think we should invest tens of millions of dollars to diversify coal economies and provide new job training and opportunities for dislocated workers. We call for investing $1 billion over the next 5 years to redevelop unreclaimed mines, which are absolutely sucking the soul out of communities, but have the potential to revitalize these same communities. All this matters because the market is proving a simple fact. Companies are pricing the coal of carbon as a cost of doing business across the board. If we didn't have a single regulation, the days of coal are fundamentally changing because it's no longer cost effective. It's a simple fact that reality has a way of intruding. And the reality of the day is market forces, in addition to all of us, are intruding on the way we generate electricity and energy in this country. But yet, too many politicians and special interests set up a false choice. Either you see coal as the key energy source for the future, or you don't, and therefore you're declared as fighting a war on coal and against the people in coal communities. The real choice is accepting the reality of a consequential energy transformation or denying it to the peril of those communities, which are already, over the last decade and a half, seeing significant negative transformation. The real choice is stepping up and doing everything we can to help those communities through this inevitable transition, or doing everything you can to undermine that to help purely for political and corporate interest in coal regions. The President and I choose to include those communities as part of the transformation. We choose to step up and do everything we can to provide opportunity for all hardworking Americans, so that when you hear coal companies say they care about their workers, ask them what they've done to improve their workers' safety on the job or protect their right to organize. When you hear elected officials chant war on coal, ask them what they're doing to help these communities face the realities of a changing economy. If they really care about these communities, ask those members in Congress to fund the Power Plus plan, to secure pensions for mine workers, to help train them for new and good-paying jobs, to revitalize the very mines that corporations stripped and left bare. Ask them what their plan is, aside from playing politics with people's livelihoods. As I said, reality has a way of intruding. There's a growing consensus among business, labor, environmental groups, public health officials that you can have a strong economy and a safe environment. It is no longer an either-or proposition. And that's incredible progress since the time I was elected as a 29-year-old kid, first campaigning on the environment and civil rights with a pro-labor platform, who are my allies in both, when so many of us started this monumental fight to do the right thing. Folks, our economy, because of the decisions, and I'm going to say it bluntly, the difficult decisions the president made on everything from the Recovery Act to Dodd-Frank and all those god-awful votes people had to take to restore the economy. But the economy's gone from crisis to recovery, and it's on the verge of genuine resurgence if we act wisely. Today, the United States of America, and I know the labor guys are tired of hearing me say this for the last several years, we're better positioned to lead the world economy in the 21st century than any other country. Again, going back to my Claymont days, the rest of the world is not a patch on our genes right now, folks. Does anybody think China is going to eat our lunch, as we've been told the last 10 years? We want China to succeed. It's necessary for stability, and so they can buy American products. We also want to see Europe grow. But ladies and gentlemen, there's an outfit called A.T. Kearney that does a survey for the last 2 decades. And it asks the 300 largest industrialists in the world, where's the best place in the world to invest? This year, by a margin larger than any time that this survey has been taken, in every category, from manufacturing to IT to research and development, every category, they say the United States is the best place to invest by a margin larger than ever in the history of this survey. Ladies and gentlemen, there's a reason for that. It's not just cheap energy. It's we have the greatest research universities in all of the world. No other place has it like us. 2, we have agile venture capitalists. 3, we have workers that are 3 times as productive as they are in China. 4, you actually can protect your intellectual property and have your contracts adjudicated before a court that you know is real. Ladies and gentlemen, we are incredibly well positioned. And that's why companies are coming home. There's another outfit called Boston Consulting Group. They do a similar survey. They ask every company invested with a facility in China every year the following question: what are your plans for next year? This past year, response to the survey from the CEOs, all American companies invested in China, 54% of the CEOs said they plan on coming home. Coming home. Look, there's a tremendous opportunity on the horizon. And American labor and the environmental movement have always pushed this country forward to seize those opportunities. There's great opportunity in modernizing our energy infrastructure, not only in terms of the environment, but in terms of the millions of jobs over time it can produce. Today's no different than other times in American history. We have been on the cusp of significant change. After World War II, at the turn of the 20th century, every time we've had leaders who had the boldness to stand up, industry and labor deciding that they work better when we work as one America. It's no different today. But we need you badly. We need this alliance of business and labor and the environmental movement badly. That's why I'm so honored, and I mean this sincerely, to receive this award and to continue to stand with you on this fight. You know, I measure the significance of an award based on the significance of the people who give you the award. I mean this sincerely. There's no group of people from whom I'd rather receive an award. So I want to thank you all. And as my grandfather Finnegan used to say in Scranton, every time I walk out the door, he'd yell, "Joey, keep the faith." And my grandmother would yell, "No, Joey, spread it. Go spread the faith. We can do this, and we can be stronger for doing it." Thank you all very much.